So, as you can see by the variety of aspects discussed in the textbook, and you know, contemplating already what you know about about this country, um, that we know that there was life and culture and on this continent, both in the north and the south, prior to white European colonial settlement, which is going to lead to the creation of the United States of America. And so it's only appropriate and fitting that we start from the beginning as to how we actually got here and remind ourselves actually that the United States of America is in fact a European project. And I want you to think about that, and just it might have been revolutionary in the attempt to break from normative forms of European political government, but all the ideas that we have of this democratic republic of the United States now is still going to come out of ideas that are Greco-Roman and European, with a Middle Eastern religion to boot, meaning Christianity, right? So, but again, though, there was life here before, and we're not going to talk about this in great detail. And in fact, unfortunately, I'm not even an expert on a lot of this. A lot of Americanists are not. My specialty is in Middle East history, but let's face it, you can be an expert on the United States of America and not know about anything or anyone prior to. And that's something telling in of itself, isn't it? That this project basically was created at the expense of another. Some argue it that way. Now, the people that lived here before, okay, had a different system, right, about property and an idea about, how to own land or not own land. And so one could say that the interpretation about states and geography and property were different than the indigenous people here to this area, and inevitably was going to create a different set of ideas about what to do. I feel like a lot of this are probably things that you've already heard before. And so let's just kind of briefly cover through them. So I just want to quickly point out, I'm not going to go into great detail with this here, is when I say indigenous people of the Americas or this continent, right? I'm talking about the people who were here the longest prior to European colonial settlement. And in fact, no matter where you go in the world, it's not like human beings grew up out of the soil. There is this kind of nationalist concept, by the way, as a side note, that certain people had over time called autochthony. To see yourselves as being an autochthonous people is that it's like you literally grow up from the ground. Your people are that embedded, right? So in the biblical concept where it says Adam was made from, like the clay of the earth, right? Like the God made him and he became a living, a nefesh chaya, a living soul, and that God's ruach, his spirit of breath, was put into him. That idea of like a human being kind of formulated out of that earth and then put into life, that kind of concept does happen in many cultures. But what we do know is, regardless of whether you believe in a spiritual metaphysical concept about somebody's origins, creation origins, that human beings settled in various places over a vast amount of time. And so there has been standard theories about, how the people, original inhabitants that Europeans came in contact with, arrived here. This is more of a standard one, looking at just at the patterns. And then there's some alternative ideas that maybe long ago, that the patterns in travel were a little bit different. I mean, if you just look back here, for example, what kind of features does this look like? These features of this stone look African, right? And so, you know, is it possible that there was actually, settlements from Africans or things like that? I am not an expert on those theories. I have been exposed to some of them. I think that if you're interested, you should explore that and, find as much scholarly material as you can. I just kind of wanted to open your idea to the fact that some of the ideas about settlement here on this land, there's various theories. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. So why would Europeans look this direction? In other words, after all these years, after all those thousands of years, what is going to create Europeans to finally start hitting the New World, the so-called New World, right? So you had significant growth in a population after a century and a half recovering from the Black Death. There was the plague in Europe, and then much growth of humans making babies again and living. Okay, you had a new merchant class that was based on trade and travel, with a whole long set of events that developed that as well. You had the rise of powerful kingdoms competing with each other, and people like since Marco Polo in the 14th century, they had a desire to trade with the East. Okay, and keep in mind that here, we have the Suez Canal. Later, this is way later down the line, there's going to be a pathway created here, but this wasn't accessible, and so you had the Mediterranean here, and you had a whole other set of trade and markets over here that Europe would be cut off from. Okay, and later we'll see how certain things are going to help develop to expand traveling, but at this time, if you look, you'd have to sail from over here, if you follow my arrow, if you can see it, go all the way down to Africa and get over here. But they didn't even necessarily know about what the full extent of the geography was. Okay, now Christopher Columbus, of course, comes up, and he's a character we've heard about our whole lives, and he's going through quite a transformation in his popularity, or lack thereof. He went from being a super rock star in courses like a US History 101 to now being seen as quite a villain. And instead of me just saying what I think, I want to address certain things, and we're going to look into the Howard Zen book, which goes into some of the words of Columbus and lets him speak about his thoughts. But I want to go back to that topic. So I'm just kind of addressing it right now, and I'm going to hit just some of these points here and then talk about Columbus just a little bit more and his legacy. So first of all, I just want to clearly say that people did not think that the earth was flat at the time. And that's a kind of myth that was created by a 19th century American writer. They did not think the earth was flat. And science actually has been quite advanced in ways that you wouldn't think. I mean, even before Jesus, in fact, one Egyptian thinker understood the earth was round and had almost the exact circumference of the earth due to the fact of analyzing a shadow. I don't have time for that, but just to say that human beings have been able to come up with understanding quite a bit from early on, even if those theories didn't take off. Maybe other false theories were, but there's patterns in nature that are very consistent, and so once people tap into them, they can come to an understanding relatively fast about how things actually work in the real world. But that's not what we're here to talk about. So I just want to knock that myth out of the way. Okay, what ethnicity was he? Well, for Italian Americans, it's clear as day. I mean, he's been a celebrated character for Italian history. For historians, for various sets of reasons, it's often been debated. Some even think he might have been a Sephardic Jewish person originally who was forced to convert to Christianity, or did so on his own opportunistically. Well, why would they even come up with that theory? Um, there's several things, but the point that is significant is in 1492, when Columbus sails the ocean blue, uh, Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain also kicked out every Muslim and every Jew from Spain. Okay, so um, the Columbus being set off correlated almost to the day the time when the Spanish reconquered, the Catholic Spain reconquered all of Spain. Spain was an Islamic country for over 800 years. If you don't know that, now you know. Okay? And there was an eventual expansion of back where the Catholic powers were able to eventually kick back and push out the Muslims back in Africa. So keep in mind, Spain is almost connected to Morocco. If you look on your map geographically, okay, and many Jews, and I mean Jews and Muslims were basically told you convert to Christianity or that's it for you. You know, there's not an option, and so many fled, and so that's kind of what was going on in Spain, to say the least, at the time. Um, and you have characters who did things like that, and in fact, you have a group of Spanish Jews who convert to Catholicism and secretly continue to be Jewish. And to this day, I actually met a woman who, her family was Spanish from Spain. They always had this vocabulary at home that nobody else seemed to have, and they would do these weird practices that, well, weird as in things that nobody else did, like these family traditions. And what she found out is that they actually were once Jewish, and the parents secretly would practice, the forefathers secretly practiced Judaism, and then they just kind of forgot about it, but they'd keep these traditions. So like they do all of these things that great great grandparents used to do, but no longer know why that they were doing them, and it's because they were descendants of forced converts. Okay, so that's just a little bit of history there. Now, people debate then, okay, Columbus, did he really, though, discover the New World? Was he the only one? And we do have an epic or a saga coming from Iceland, the Vinland Saga, which appears that most likely Vikings actually discovered the continent first. But before I say anything further about that, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to return to that topic just a little bit, and then return to the legacy of Columbus and what we're going to be dealing with in discussions and thoughts. And then we'll move to the next section here and just kind of talk about the name of the continent as well. Okay, so stop right here.